What is up, everybody? This is Jay here, online personal trainer. First things first, I have made some changes with what I'm doing with my website. In fact, I'm actually going to stop doing the website. I know in the last few videos I've been telling you guys that I've been starting to make a website. There's a few reasons why I decided to stop doing this. One, as humans, we tend to, when we start a project or have a goal in our head, we tend to want to finish that goal, even if it would be the smarter thing to stop it and pursue that goal later or do a different goal entirely. So I am making a wise decision, and it's not good to do this on everything, but I mean, I feel like I'm making a wise decision because I see other websites and they seem to be doing things that I want to do or that I don't know how to do with my website currently. Right now I'm with Squarespace, and Squarespace is amazing, but at the end of the day, it's just a website builder. So any website builder you're not going to be able to get super in depth with. And I used to, before I even tried the website builder, this was about a year ago, I did tried making another website with WordPress, and that was just at that, and it was too complicated because, again, I have no background in web design or anything like that. So that was too complicated. So again, I don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. I'd rather be a master of a few things than a jack of all trades. Like, I mean, as you know, I don't have super fancy editing on my videos because I'm really not good with that stuff. So if I try to be good with that, with just personal training, studying, because I study a lot, I read a lot with fitness, then be a good web, design, a website builder, and then be good with that, and then I'm a full-time student, then be good at programming my own workouts and helping other people. That's a lot of stuff to take on at one time, so I decided to pursue that later on. So I'll keep you guys updated with that, but as of now, I'm going to hold off on the website and remove the links on my social media platforms. But everything else is still good to go. My social media is my Facebook, Instagram, so if you have any questions, you can still leave those on there. All right, let's get into the video though. And the video today is going to be on whether or not deadlifts are they a back or a leg exercise. I'm going to give you guys my educated answer to this, and I'm going to try to not give you some BS answer either. I'm going to try to tell you the evidence-based stuff and tell you what I know. I know a lot of people have tackled this opinion before, but hey, I definitely like throwing in my like I said, my educated answers and opinions on things like this too, just so you can get another opinion in there. All right, the prime movers of a deadlift are the glutes and the hamstrings. That is common knowledge. That is something that's not unknown. It's very common. Basically, when you go from a flex tip and then you extend your hip, the glutes and the hamstrings are what do that. To a lesser extent and to a much smaller extent, the calves as well, but we're not going to get into that right now. We're just talking real simple terms, not trying to make this super complicated, is the glutes and the hamstrings. These two muscle groups concentrically contract and when you're moving the bar up, and they eccentrically contract when you are moving the bar down on a deadlift. So they are basically what move the bar up and move the bar down. So yeah, like I said, it's as simple as that, nothing too complicated. Now you may be thinking, well, what about the back and all these other muscle groups? The lats, the rhomboids, the traps, the spinal erectors, and the grip. Let's start with the grip because we just want to kind of get that out of the way. The grip holds the bar. Basically, you can't hold the bar, you can't move it. So your grip in your hands function like hooks to be able to hold the bar, so that when you concentrically tract your glutes and your hamstrings, the prime movers, that the bar moves along with you. So even though we're going to start talking about these other two, just remember the grip is the same thing as the above two, isometrically contract. They contract with basically no movement, or they shouldn't be. Now, when you talk about the lats, the rhomboids, the traps, and the spinal erectors, these stay activated. They stay activated to do two different things. One, to protect your spine. If you, let's just say you hypothetically don't activate these and you just lift the bar off the ground with a rounded back, that could cause herniated discs, low back pain, pulled muscles, a bunch of bad problems. You don't want that. So you think, well, of course I got to keep my back straight. Well, that's why you activate these muscle groups. The lats, the back musculature, you keep those activated to stabilize the spine and to protect your spine, to protect the muscle groups there so you don't hurt yourself. Now, another reason why you do that is because you want to increase performance. You don't want any energy leakage along your kinetic chain, because if you do, you're going to not be able to transfer as much force through the ground, through the bar, to be able to lift the bar and lift as much weight. When it comes to gaining muscle, like hypertrophy, moving less weight for a repetition maximum is obviously less volume, and less volume means less gains, less results in the long run. With strength, if you're in competition or just lifting in general, the less weight you lift, same thing, less volume, your body's not dealing with as heavy as a load. Bad technique could lead to bad technique and competition, and that eventually could be the difference between first and second place. So if you don't, activating your back musculature is going to help with performance, lifting the most weight you can, and being able to protect your spine. But the main difference between these two is that these muscle groups right here, the grip too, but I mean, we're not so much focused on the grip as the back muscles, but the back musculature is isometrically contracting during this lift. It is not concentrically contracting. You are isometrically contracting these muscle groups to some extent. Again, you could get super in depth with this. Some people could say, well, your upper back muscles, you're not really contracting that much. You're contracting more of your lats. But what I'm trying to say is that none of these muscle groups are concentrically, they're not doing any concentric contractions during this lift. What you want to do is, before you even pick up the bar, you want to get as tight as possible so that you can lift the bar up off the ground. And again, lift as much weight as you can, protect your spine, all that good stuff. But again, you're not concentrically contracting these. If these are moving any during the lift, you are not going to have an efficient lift. Again, you want to keep your back as tight and as like stoned as you can. You want your upper body almost to be like a stone. Any movement like this during the lift is going to ultimately lead to again, it's just excess movement that you don't need. If you watch any expert powerlifters or any people who could lift a lot of weight, they're going to get tight before they lift the bar up off the ground. And again, you're not going to see a ton of hitching. You're not going to see a bunch of movement. It's going to be a real clean, swift movement is what it's going to look like. Even with the heavy weight, the weight might seem like it's a grinder. You might have to grind through it, but a good deadlift or someone with good technique, it's not going to, like I said, it's not going to be a lot of hitching. You're not going to see a lot of movement of the upper body. You shouldn't if you want to have the most efficient lift. So yeah, these are concentrically and eccentrically contracting depending on whether you're going up or down, and these are just isometrically contracting. Now, a few different points that I need to make. With eccentric or with concentric contractions specifically, lifting positive contractions, so basically when the bar's on the ground to when you lift it up, that is where you are the weakest in terms of lifting the most load. You cannot lift, of the three different types of contractions, eccentric, concentric, and isometric contractions, for the main ones. I know you can get isotonic and all these other ones, but I'm just talking about the main three. Concentric contraction is where you're the weakest. You're going to be able to lift the least amount of weight on the concentric contraction. Isometric contraction is in the middle. You're going to be able to lift more than the concentric contraction, but not as much as the eccentric contraction, the negative. Now, the negative or the eccentric contraction is where you're going to be able to lift the most weight. So knowing that, again, you could test this on a bar, anything. Like, for example, if your max bench press is 225, if you put 230 on the bar, I guarantee you, you're going to be able to hold it for a little bit before it starts to drop. The fact that you can hold it even for a little bit means you can isometrically contract and hold 230. Now, if you were to do even more, let's say your max is 225 on a bench press and you put 240 on the bar, you're going to be able to slowly lower it, but you're not going to be able to get it back up. So you can eccentrically contract or eccentrically lift a heavier load than you can on the other two. So knowing that, when you're isometrically contracting with these muscle groups, they're not having to go through a full concentric contraction as is the glutes and hamstrings. Now, I know your glutes are your leg musculature is the strongest musculature you have in your entire body. So it might seem like it's more difficult for these muscle groups, but you just got to keep that in mind when you're thinking about these. These are not concentrically contracting. But yes, they are, even if they're not concentrically contracting, they are still isometrically contracting to some extent. Now, what is it? A back or leg exercise? And it might sound like a cop-out answer, but it's not. It does both. I don't care what anyone says, it does both. They are both a back exercise and leg exercise anytime, no matter what you do with it. To some extent, they are a back or a leg exercise. Now, what I would say is, if you are doing a ton of deadlifts on one day, I wouldn't recommend, like if you're doing a bunch, I would not recommend doing a bunch of pull-ups the day before or the day after, a ton. Like if you have, let's just say you have a typical back day where you consider deadlifts legs and you don't do deadlifts on a back day, you do them on leg day. Now let's just say you have a back day with like rows, pull-ups, face pulls and things like that. No deadlifts though. Then the next day you have a leg day and you put deadlifts on leg day and you do a ton of deadlifts. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that just because you're still isometrically contracting that. What I personally wouldn't recommend, I would not put deadlifts as a back exercise. I personally don't like that. Yes, like I said, you are still isometrically contracting them, but I wouldn't put them on a I wouldn't put deadlifts on a back day because they are not the prime movers in the exercise. They are just there to stabilize. I found that over time, and again, you can gauge this personally. Here's another tip. So the first tip was if you're doing a ton of deadlifts, I probably wouldn't put a heavy standard back day like pull-ups, rows before or after. So that's tip one. Tip two, I would you should be having deload phases during your program, or you should have a time where you take a few days off just to give your body some recovery. You should have one of those two. Some days where you do nothing, and then deload phases programmed in your training somewhere. When you come back, maybe try to put your deadlift day first with no other back exercises. Just have maybe a leg day where you do deadlifts and then some squats and other things. See the next day, see how sore your back gets. Because you just had your deload phase or your days off, and you come back, you should get a little bit of delayed onset muscle soreness. That soreness where you get like the next day. And if you do deadlifts and you feel a bunch of soreness in your legs, but you don't feel much soreness in your back, then you can tell that maybe the isometric contractions just aren't much for you. Genetically, you have a strong back when it comes to isometric contractions. Now, if you come back and you do deadlifts and you're sore as shit and your lats are sore and everything feels tight, then that's probably showing you that, okay, maybe my body kind of registers back more than other people. Maybe I just have a weaker back. There could be a lot of factors that go into it. That's tip two, is see how sore you get after a deload phase when you do deadlifts. See how sore you get. Don't do any other back exercises, though, on that day because that's going to make you sore no matter what. But just do deadlifts and see how that affects you in general. And yeah, so ultimately use those two tips. I would definitely, again, it's a lot of, might be some testing involved that you got to do is try deadlift, see that. But personally, ultimately, like I said, so the answers of this video would be they works both. It works legs and it works back. Legs as the prime movers, back as just stabilizers because they contract isometrically. Depending on your strength of your back, if you have a really strong back, if you do pull-ups other days throughout the week and your back's just very good at holding things isometrically, if you do a lot of rows, that might not be that hard for you. And genetics, just genetics too, deadlifts could get you sore in your back. They typically don't for me. So yeah, and plus, honestly, with me, I don't do a ton of deadlifts on one day anyways. When I do legs, I put deadlifts on my leg days, and I do deadlifts and squats on the same day. I pick one heavy and one not heavy. So if a typical leg day for me could be like 3 to 5 reps of deadlifts, so that'd be heavy, maybe closer to 5 reps. With longer rest periods, maybe 4 or 5 sets. That's it. That's all the deadlifts I do right there. And then I go into squats. And then after I finish my squats, I go into some other leg exercise. It could be like a posterior chain movement, again, like glute bridges or something like that. The gist of it is I don't do too many deadlifts. If you're someone who ends up doing 12 sets of deadlifts on a day, that's, again, even though you're only isometrically contracting your back for 12 heavy sets is going to take a toll on your back musculature, so you're not going to be able to do back the next day. Me, I don't do a ton of deadlifts, so a few sets of deadlifts is going to be a lot on my glutes and hamstrings because I know how to activate them over time in practice, but for me, it's not going to do a ton on my back. It never has. It never affected anything. So I could do a typical back day where I have pull-ups, rows, face pulls, rear delt flies, whatever. And then the next day, I can have a leg day. That's just me. Again, depending on how many deadlifts you're doing, genetics, and whether or not you get sore from doing deadlifts. So again, ask yourself that. Do I get sore after I break? If I come back and do deadlifts, do I get sore? Yeah. You probably shouldn't be doing a bunch of deadlifts the day after a pull-up day or something. Same thing, if you're like, I don't get sore, deadlifts don't seem to really work my back, and I typically have a stronger back too, you probably could do deadlifts the next day after your back. But personally, me, I don't put them on a back day. It doesn't make any sense. The prime movers are glutes and hamstrings. But just because I put deadlifts on a back day doesn't mean that the back isn't affected, if you get what I'm saying. So ultimately, like I say, I would fire you. Deadlifts to me are a leg exercise. Basically what's happening, to simplify this, is these muscle groups are functioning to stabilize your body and hold the weight, and these muscle groups are functioning almost like a leg press. You're pushing against the ground to extend your body to a standing position while these keep everything stabilized. So if you look at a leg press, this is a good analogy. If you look at a leg press, the nuts and bolts that hold the whole leg press in unison and together is these on your body when you're not doing it, and your legs pushing a leg press up and down or your glutes and hamstrings, and depending on how your feet or your quads, but we're not going to get into that, but it's your glutes and hamstrings. Now a deadlift is the same thing, except you don't have the seat, you don't have the pad, you don't have the railing. What has to hold you in place is these muscle groups. So these are still working, but again, depending on you, depending on whether or not you have a strong back, depending on genetics, depending on how many deadlifts you do, depending on if you had a really heavy like pull-up day the day before, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I like putting deadlifts on leg days because the prime movers are glutes and hamstrings. But you still have to keep in your head that these muscle groups are being isometrically contracted. So no, it's not a cop-out answer. It is on a case-by-case basis. Personally, me, because I don't ever do too many deadlifts at one time anyways. I don't see the point. I like getting total leg development in a workout. I may prioritize one or the other. I like doing deadlifts on leg days, and depending on you, if you have a heavy back day before and you have how you program it, you may be doing more deadlifts than me. That's not right or wrong, but if you're doing a ton of deadlifts the next day, you may not want to do it like that. If you guys have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. Again, if you have any questions at all, you can contact me on my Facebook page, JP Personal Trainer. I'll leave all the links down below, but until next time, see ya.